top of the hour, first and foremost, thank you for coming to this session. My name is Dux Raymond Sai, and in the next hour, we're going to unpack and talk about all the goodness around SharePoint Server 2016 and a hybrid scenario with Office 365. I've been working with this technology, boy, even before it was called SharePoint. I had the great opportunity to get involved in a project. I lived and worked in Washington, D.C., and at that time, I was working for this three-letter government agency, and my boss said, hey, Dux, you know, Microsoft has this thing, team services. For those that are familiar with that, that was like one of the first incarnation of SharePoint, and since that point onwards, I got engaged, fell in love with the technology, and the rest is history. I had the great opportunity to write a book around SharePoint a long time ago called SharePoint for Project Management. I don't know if you guys seen it. Anybody seen that book back in 2007? Yeah, it was 80 cents a copy for my son's college fund. So I'm still working today. But other than that, boy, it's such an exciting time with all the phenomenal innovations in the cloud. But even better, I can still stay on premises and take advantage of a coexistence scenario, which we will cover in the next hour. I work for a company called AppPoint. We build software on top of the Microsoft Cloud in SharePoint. And I work with a lot of customers around the world in all different shapes and sizes in a lot of different scenarios. So what are we going to cover and talk about today? So just to set some perspective for our agenda, what I'll do is I'll step back and look at a 50,000-foot view. Where are we today from a perspective of the on-premises world, what's going on in the cloud, what it means for coexistence, the value it provides for you as an organization, and then second, we'll talk about SharePoint 2016. So we'll start with on-premises. We'll talk about what SharePoint 2016 is, what it has for you, all the wonderful capabilities, and then we'll look at the recent feature packs, the innovations that Microsoft has brought down from the cloud and made it available on premises, and then we'll talk about hybrid scenarios. And certainly, you know, we'll make this session interactive. If you have questions, raise your hand, give me a holler. I'll show you some demos as we go through the presentation, and really make the most out of the next hour if you have any questions at all. So, and then lastly, I'll talk about migration, because you know, just working with a lot of different customers. On one hand, you know, Dux, we have 2013, or we're in 2010, we're thinking hybrid, we need to move stuff. So I'll talk about what options you have for migration, what Microsoft has, and really I'm going to share some pragmatic framework as well on how you can do migration. How does that sound? Sounds good? All right, so let's get going here, friends. So let's talk about the cloud. You know, when I think it was almost, what, 4 years ago now when Office 365 came out, or maybe longer than that, there's this idea that it's all or nothing, right? You know, forget on-premises, straight to the cloud, all or nothing. But as we've learned, because of a lot of different needs and different requirements, in a lot of organizations, this is not even a conversation. It's not a possibility. I mean, I live and work in Washington, D.C., and working with government, for example, the military, what cloud? Cloud doesn't exist. Or maybe if you're in a highly compliant, highly regulated environment, anybody working for financial services?
Law firms.
Law firms, right? Legal, healthcare, right? Anybody have to deal with SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley compliance? The cloud is just a no-go. Now, the good news is, through a lot of the wonderful innovations and capabilities, we don't have to pick that battle. We can have a scenario where we can coexist. And this is actually really, really good. We can keep what we have from an on-premises perspective. So, for example, there's certain data that just can't go to the cloud. But then you want to take advantage of the innovations of the cloud, you could, with this idea of coexistence. The other benefit that we get from this experience, you know, forget going to the cloud or staying on-prem. The other benefit we have is minimizing change. You know how it goes. Remember back in the days when you were upgrading SharePoint 2003 to 2007? and then you rolled it out, everybody got excited for 2 weeks, and then they went back to emailing attachments. Remember those days? Okay. Because the hardest part of any technology change is people. How many of your users tell you SharePoint sucks? It's all right, you can raise your hand. Well, when you see them, when you go back on Monday or something, look at them straight in the eye, and they tell you SharePoint sucks, you look at them and say, SharePoint doesn't suck, you suck. Say, Duck said so. Right? That's the hardest part. So how do we make it easy for our users to do the right thing? What we can do is we minimize this idea of context switching, right? Oh, if you're going to do this, go here in SharePoint. Well, if you want to do this, go here on Office 365. That's too much. What if you can have a simplistic experience, but still take advantage of the benefits of on-premises, SharePoint 2016, and Office 365? And that's what we're going to look at today. So how can you embark on this journey, right? So the framework, the approach I'm going to walk you through, first and foremost, will tackle SharePoint 2016. So who's still in 2010 or 2013? Okay? Yeah, a couple of us. Hopefully nobody's 2007 anymore. Microsoft doesn't support you. You know, support's gone, right? Anyway. So step one, go to 2016. We'll talk about that. And then the next step, once you've got 2016 up and running, make sure you apply all the latest feature packs as well. All right? And then once you, and again, I'll talk about that. I'll talk about all the capabilities. And then once you have all the feature packs that you need, or the capabilities of the feature pack you need configured, then we can look at how we set up hybrid. So that's the journey we're going to walk through in the next 45 minutes or so. Now I'm going to show you a lot of stuff. I'm going to show you, demos and checklists and examples. This session is being recorded. Feel free to take notes, take pictures. You're welcome to do so. But we'll make sure you get a copy of all the content that's being presented as well. Okay, so let's talk about 2016. All right. When Microsoft announced SharePoint 2016, it was a very exciting time, especially for me, as I started working in this industry before SharePoint 2001. Why is it exciting for me? Because the difference with 2016, unlike in the past, where every release of SharePoint is pretty much, in my mind, a different product. I don't know if you remember, SharePoint 2003 had its own architecture, 2007 has its own thing, 2010 has its own thing. And remember shared services application? Remember you had to deploy to the GAC? Back in the days of STS ADM, 12 Hive, right? Showing my age. But every time it's different. And to some extent, it's kind of frustrating. So Microsoft took a different approach with 2016. What Microsoft did is, this is really a product that was born from the cloud. What 2016 is essentially Office 365 SharePoint Online brought down on-prem. All the innovations that Microsoft did, all the learnings that they had, they made it available on premises. While there's a lot of great features and capabilities, what stands out is in these three key areas. First is it's a cloud-inspired infrastructure, which I'll unpack and cover and discuss further in a second. Next is the new user experiences. And as I'm sure if you're keeping up with the latest and greatest news, Microsoft has focused a lot on the user experience, not just with SharePoint. From the modern sites to communication sites to the hub site. And along the same lines with other capabilities, like OneDrive, for example. I don't know about you, I'm so excited with OneDrive. Especially with the latest update from Windows Fall Creators, Files on Demand, and I'll show you in a second. It just makes it easy for me. And don't even get me started on the mobile capabilities, right? So the experience is top of mind for Microsoft. The third area, which is really important, is in the area of compliance. And notice that here, it says people-centric compliance. I mean, the concept of security and compliance has been around forever, but this time, it's focused on us. And the way I describe this is Microsoft is really doing their best with all the innovations to make it easy for people to do the right thing. What do you mean, Dux? For example, you know, back in the days when you had to set up term store, content types, and you tell your user, when you upload something to a library, make sure you tag it, all right? Do they do it? No. Then what do? You make it required. So when you save it, what? Word would say, danger, Will Robinson. Properties, you got to fill it in. You know what I'm talking about. And what do? They still don't do it. They get frustrated, they just send email attachment. But what if there's innovations that all those things can be automated? What if a user accidentally uploads something with a credit card number that's not supposed to be there? Right? Every time I walk into a customer and I say, hey, if I search your internet and look for people's salary, will I find it? I hope not. I really don't know. But what if there's something that can minimize that? And that's a lot of the investment that Microsoft has put in SharePoint 2016. So first, let's talk about how 2016 is cloud inspired, right? So, like I said, Microsoft took all the learnings from SharePoint Online and brought it down on premises. And why this is critical, because what happens now is it's a converged code base. So the same code that runs SharePoint Online runs SharePoint 2016. Which means that I don't have to worry about when SharePoint 2019 comes out, it's not going to be a totally different architecture or model. So I'm spared of that pain that I had to deal with in the past. So that's great, right? A wonderful innovation, which I'll spend more time in a second, is MinRoles. Anybody familiar with MinRoles? You've used MinRoles, all right? I'll explain what that is. But that came from SharePoint Online. Boy, it took a lot of manual work away from a SharePoint admin, which is great. Now, another area, because if you think about it, right? With SharePoint Online, it has to serve users and customers at scale, especially in a multi-tenant environment. So what does that mean? All the capabilities, for example, search, in 2016, it has a double, it can actually look up to 500 million items in a single search query. That's double from 2013. And we know that more and more content is being generated across the board. And not just text or documents, you have other types of content as well. Public updates. These days, the updates that come out aren't in gigs anymore. Very bite-sized cumulative updates. And Microsoft is releasing it in a very fast pace as well, in a non-obtrusive way. So all these things combined, but to me, here's the best part of SharePoint 2016. You know, back in the day, if I bought SharePoint 2007, install it on-prem from Microsoft, if the server goes down, who's on the hook? Is Microsoft on the hook? No, it's my problem, right? The server went down. Oh, I forgot to patch it last Tuesday. You guys missed Patch Tuesday? But in Office 365, if the service goes down, who's on the hook? Microsoft. Well, you too. So what does that mean? There's a certain level of SLA, a certain level of quality that's required so that Microsoft can keep customers happy, can get more customers, and make sure customers continue subscribing and consuming the platform. So that high level of quality is now available for us on premises through SharePoint 2016. What else? It's very flexible. While the hybrid model was first introduced in 2013, somebody was asking me earlier prior to our session, can I do hybrid in 2013? Absolutely. However, it's not as flexible and it's not as fully featured as 2016. Lastly, when we look at the hybrid scenarios, and I'll show you a bunch of demos in a second, it naturally extends a lot of the applications to the cloud with simple integrated experiences. And it's not just the traditional workloads. I mean, fine, we can hook up to OneDrive, Yammer, Office 365 videos, but we can tap into things like Dell or the Microsoft Graph, where in no way we can set that up on-prem. And that's very exciting. So, this next part, so we talked about the innovations and the investment Microsoft has made, is first taking the code base of SharePoint Online and making it available in on-premises. Next, user experience is top of mind. There's a lot of new experiences, very subtle, but greatly improves the interaction between the end user or even the admin with SharePoint 2016. First of all, the ability to instantly access and share to people, content, and applications. There's a lot of different ways to do this, from sharing of sites, right, to sharing of content. You know, one thing I really love, I'll show you quickly, is OneDrive. So let's see. All right, so let me pull this up. So this is my OneDrive for Business. And it syncs. I sync it, with my local machine. All my files are there. So if for some reason something happened on my computer, I'm fine. But even better, with the latest update of the Fall Creators Update and the updates to OneDrive, so simple things you'll notice. Files on demand is great, but this is the best part. So let me look at this. Let me pick a file. So let's say this PowerPoint, right? I want to share. Now, in the past, before I hit share, in the past when I hit share, what happens? It redirects me to OneDrive, right? Like a browser pops up, and then I have to click a couple, how do you want to share it, read only, edit, whatever, right? And you click people's thing. So if I click that, check that out. The sharing experience, while it's still technically doing the same thing, is now in context within Windows Explorer, within my Windows experience. And that's not only true for, in this case, Windows Explorer, but also within Office applications as well. So these experiences, while it may look like it's minimal or subtle, it goes a long way, especially with your end users. Because the common complaint of your end users is what? Oh, it's so hard. I'm just going to use Box or Dropbox, right? Now, mobility. The other investment that Microsoft has doubled down on is the mobile experience, cross-platform, cross-devices. I mean, who would have thought, right? If 4 years ago I told you, if you had an iPhone, you go to iOS, the top apps would be Microsoft apps. You tell me 4 years ago, what are you smoking, Doug? But it's true today. You go to the iOS store, top apps are Outlook, OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint app on mobile, be it Android or iOS, is phenomenal. And even if you have a hybrid setup, which we'll talk about in a second, the mobile experience is the same. Because if you think about mobile, you're thinking, well, maybe I just have to do Office 365. Well, no. If you have a hybrid, you can pull it up on your SharePoint app on your mobile device as well. The other area around experience is the developer experience. I'm sure, anybody heard of SharePoint Framework? All right. So while there's a lot of great innovations around development, one of the key innovation is a technology called SharePoint Framework. It's essentially a new model of page development, web part development. Back in the day, when you want to develop fancy stuff on SharePoint, the development is done on the server side, on SharePoint itself, right? But because of innovations on the web and on browsers, we can do a lot on the browser side. With the latest versions of HTML, with the progression of JavaScript, Angular, we can use SharePoint Framework to build phenomenal applications that runs on the client side that works with SharePoint 2016. The last key area that SharePoint 2016 is highly invested in is in the area of compliance. I know back in the day, as SharePoint admins, we don't really care about compliance or security. It's not my job, it's security people's job, or the privacy officer's job. But now it's all our jobs. And Microsoft is continuing to invest in making sure that not only that people are productive using the platform, but the platform is also secure. So 3 key areas. The investments around Compliance Center, which I'll show you in a second. The ability to make sure that we put in the right policies for certain content to show up or not show up. And this is the concept of data loss prevention. The updates on e-discovery center. Anybody familiar with e-discovery? Right? So the idea of e-discovery is being able to identify and put together electronic content that's going to be used as evidence if you get into some kind of litigation. This was introduced in 2013, but in 2016, it has been improved, and I'll show this to you in a second. And also, later when we talk about hybrid, there is a capability which is in preview now called Microsoft SharePoint Insights, where a lot of the audit information would be ingested into Office 365, be processed in Office 365, but Office 365 Compliance Center, where you can get better reporting and more robust auditing capability. Lastly, with investment around compliance, we can also enable document-level encryption when combined with Office 365. Look, the exciting part about this, and this is, I was at a panel yesterday. Anybody attended the panel that I did yesterday? Marissa Salazar, who works for Office 365 Security, said something very insightful. It just got stuck. She said, look, we're in the day and age now where we don't have to pick between productivity and security. Back in the days, if your environment's ultra secure, think government, right? You're not productive. Because it's too, you got a VPN in. I have a customer today to access SharePoint Environment. They have to VPN in using, I think, Citrix or VPN to go to SharePoint. It's too restricted. Or if you're ultra productive, think startups, right? We're going to use, Google Drive, Box, Dropbox, but those are not as secure. What Microsoft is offering is a better together sort of. What if you can be productive? The experience is great. But equally as important, it's secure as well. So that's what the platform provides. Now, I want to quickly go through this because, every time I work with customers, I assume people understand the basics of compliance. Nobody would say that they don't know, right? Oh yeah, let's talk about DLP, RMS, Run DMC. Oh yeah, let's talk about it. But let me break it down for you. Forgive me, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page and understand what these compliance technologies are and what they mean and why it's important to you. So first things foremost, let's talk about DLP. DLP stands for data loss prevention. The concept of DLP is to protect the system, to protect the data in the system. So as an example, Office 365 has a DLP technology called Compliance Center. So what you can do with DLP, you can say things like this. We're not going to allow credit card numbers in Exchange Online, OneDrive, SharePoint Online. Everybody with me? And if a credit card number shows up, either reject it, delete it, remove it, whatever. You follow me? That's DLP, to prevent the loss of data. The next type of technology is called CASB, Cloud Access Security Broker. The idea of CASB is to protect the access. So it goes back to the user. Who's accessing, right? In the Microsoft world, in Azure, there's a technology called Cloud App Security, Advanced Security Management. So you can say, this gentleman here can only access this content in this office, but if he goes elsewhere, he cannot access it. We good? Last type of technology is RMS. You guys should be familiar with this, rights management. Back in the days, it was introduced in Office. Even today, some people use it. When somebody sends you a file, you can't open it unless you have a password. That's RMS, right? And then now it's extended to Office 365 and SharePoint as well. the idea is, while we have these different technology, the intent is to protect data. This is what we call data-centric audit and protection. All right. Now, with that being said, let me kind of walk you through and show you a couple of things, right? So, first and foremost, I wonder if I have my internet. So, just kind of going through SharePoint 2016, I want to walk you through all the things I've talked about. This is SharePoint 2016. For those that have seen 2013 or have seen SharePoint Online, pretty much it looks similar, right? But I want to touch on some of the key features and capabilities. First and foremost, it's cloud-born, meaning a lot of capability SharePoint Online is brought down to on-prem. So from the experience, the look and feel is very similar. What I want to spend time on, and I'll show all the other stuff later, is in the area of compliance. So Compliance Center is here, and this is, again, for on-prem SharePoint 2016. So for example, I was just talking about data loss prevention, right, DLP. So let's say I put a DLP policy around financial data, and by the way, there are built-in policies, standard policies in it already. Policies, things like credit card number or personal information, all that good stuff. And the way it picks it up, it's not just regular pattern matching. It's not like, oh, okay, if it's some bank account number, it should be 3 numbers, dash 2 numbers. It's not that. It takes advantage of pattern matching, regular expression. It has some complex algorithm as well to look at, contextual base. So it does a lot of these types of analysis to figure out if it's in violation or not, right? So I put the policy in here, and by the way, I'll share all the resources on how you can set that up. So essentially I'm saying I'm not going to allow or alert me if there's a credit card number, if there's a violation. And if there's a violation, the content can only be accessed by the site owner and the content owner. Everybody with me? Now, since I'm like a super admin, I could see everything. So let me show you how this works. So I'm going to go back, and very simple example. So let me go to this site, and in my document library, somebody uploaded, a piece of document that's in violation. Because this document has a bunch of credit card numbers in it. So a couple things you'll see. Because that piece of content has violated the policy, first and foremost, you see the icon with a little policy tip, as they call it, or a warning symbol. When I click on it, it will say, look, this piece of document has credit card number. And as soon as you open it, you see a message saying it has credit card number. So now the question becomes, you got to move it somewhere or get rid of it or change it and whatnot. So this is just one simple example, but in the spirit of making it easy for user to do the right thing, this is a great update to the technology. Next, in the area of compliance, so let me go to e-discovery. So again, what's e-discovery? The idea of being able to identify sites and content so we can use it for evidence if there's any type of legal litigation going on. So same example. So as a part of my e-discovery, I have a query against data loss prevention. So in this scenario, again, the query is actually there. Again, a lot of the common ones are built in. You can put your own query as well. And then the other areas, if you have any type of in-place hold. So as part of e-discovery, if you're in a litigation, the idea is certain, while the content can still be used or updated, the idea is you want to capture that piece of content, essentially freeze it, right? Whatever that, when the in-hold starts happening, and make sure you have a copy of that. So for example, let's say if this is related to Sarbanes-Oxley, so there's a policy called High Business Impact. If you're familiar with Sarbanes-Oxley, any financially related data has to be kept for at least 7 years, right? So you can put that time period and hold it for that period of time. What do you guys think so far? Useful? All right, next. So those are, some of the fundamental innovations 2016 that's available in SharePoint Online, that's not available on-prem. Next. So after 2016 came out, Microsoft just didn't stop. The cadence of updates is not every 3 years anymore. So when there's two major feature packs that came out, and the way Microsoft broke it down is for feature pack 1, it updated SharePoint 2016, focused on two core areas. First, for the IT pros, for the IT admins, and I'll talk about all the capabilities in a second. Next, for the information worker or the end user. And then for feature pack 2, dev capabilities was introduced. So SharePoint Framework is now available on on-prem as well. So let's talk about some of the core innovations for feature pack 1. So MinRole, first and foremost, was introduced when SharePoint 2016 was introduced. MinRole is a SharePoint Online capability, and to put it simply, it's a role-based server topology that takes care of provisioning, unprovisioning server instances based on role. In the past, I don't know if you remember, if you set up 2010 or 2013, you have to set up the roles of the server. Oh, you're an application server, you're a search server, you're a front end. Everybody with me? And they have to maintain that and make sure everybody's happy and they're running and all that good stuff. But with MinRole, it can take care of it automatically. Now, what are the requirements? Originally, in SharePoint 2016, you had to have 4 servers: front end, distributed cache server, search server, app server. If you want high availability, you have to double it, 8 servers. Now, for some big companies, that's okay, but for small organizations, that may be too much, especially from an on-prem scenario. So with feature pack 1, Microsoft introduced the concept of shared min roles. So instead of 4, you can have 2 to get started, which is great. Now, what's the benefit? What other benefits? So it can take care of provisioning and unprovisioning these services. Second, at least for me, one of the cool things is this concept of go local, where the idea is MinRole will make sure that the request will be serviced by local servers, and that way it'll be faster, it'll be more efficient, and if anything goes wrong, MinRole will also take care of rotating which servers to service the request. Now, MinRole is also self-healing. And what that means is if a service goes down, it will reallocate the service to another server. And on the flip side, if you grow and scale, you can switch around the services as well. Now, for some of you, you're like, well, this is great, Docs, but you know, I like to roll my sleeves up and really take care of each of the service. Can I not use MinRole? Absolutely. There's a custom setting where you're really not using MinRole, but look, it's kind of like driving on a freeway with a Lamborghini on first gear. That's what you're doing, right? So MinRole, if I were you, I'd take advantage of it. Next, another capability, at least from an IT perspective. So Microsoft, through user feedback, introduced admin actions logging. Now, what does this mean? Have you ever experienced you went to work one day as a SharePoint admin and suddenly stuff's not running? You look at the logs and it doesn't seem like anybody did anything, but you know somebody did something. Anybody experience that? All right. They don't work for you anymore, right? So Microsoft took that feedback and introduced admin actions logging. It enables logging of 60 common administrative actions. It captures the time, the account, and what activities took place. And this is really, really good. So you don't have to play that he said, she said game anymore. One tip though, if you want to take advantage of this, make sure you don't use shared accounts for logging, right? Hey, what's that password again? Here's the post-it note, right? So this is another capability. What else? So that's more from an IT perspective. Those are the key highlights from the feature pack 1. For the information worker, for the end user, on SharePoint 2016, the OneDrive UX is also available now on-prem. So the experience for OneDrive for Business online is now available for your on-prem environment. And I'll show a bunch of demo in a second. And then last but not the least, SharePoint Framework capability was introduced in Feature Pack 2. SharePoint Framework is a technology that was obviously created in SharePoint Online, now brought down to on-prem. And it allows developers to create phenomenal applications, maximizing the client-side capabilities. It's a new page and a web part model that you can take advantage of. There's tons of great resources out there. I don't know if you know a guy named Andrew Connell. He's written a lot about this. He has a lot of great examples, so make sure you check it out. And Microsoft continuously investing in this. It supports a lot of the open source tools in JavaScript web frameworks as well. So again, it's optimized for modern client-centric rendering experiences, and it is available on-prem. Right? So if you want to look at all these resources, all the links are there. I know I spent a lot of time on 2016 because I really want to stress and reiterate the capabilities that you get with this on-prem infrastructure. And even for some reason, you walk away and say, you know what, I'm going to try on-prem first, I'm not going to do hybrid. You're getting a lot already. Now, let's take it up a notch. Okay, Dux, you talked about, you know, we got to have SharePoint 2016. We got to put all the feature packs to take advantage of it. What's the next step? The next step is let's look at hybrid scenarios. So when we talk about hybrid, the idea of SharePoint hybrid is really bringing down the cloud capabilities, combining it with our on-prem environment, having this coexistence scenario so that our users will have a single pane of glass to interact with SharePoint and get their job done, right? Why choose hybrid? I mean, I don't have to preach to the choir, but again, you can take advantage of a single experience without context switching for your users, going to a bunch of different applications or browsers, but you can scale and grow the capabilities of SharePoint. You know, these are stats that Microsoft pulled. 40% of SharePoint Server customers use one or more hybrid scenarios. And check this out. There's 5 times higher usage of cloud services when adopting a hybrid scenario, which is great. Yeah? Because look, your users today, very familiar with a lot of technologies. If you're stuck in SharePoint 2010 or 2013 and they want to get their job done, and the capability's not there for your on-prem environment, what do? They box it, they Dropbox it, they Google Drive it, they assign it. What if you can provide that capability to your platform? And you can with a hybrid setup. So how do we get started? All right, so I'm going to show a lot of demos starting here. So here's what you have today for hybrid, right? The entry point for hybrid, first and foremost, is the app launcher. Okay, so let me kind of quickly jump to my screen here. What's the app launcher? This is the app launcher, also known as the waffle. I didn't know it was called the app launcher until only a couple months ago. I keep calling it the waffle. So that's the app launcher. That's essentially like, I think about it, that's kind of like the menu. You know how in Windows you have this start menu? Yeah, the app launcher is kind of like your menu, right? So that's where people start. So from the app launcher, that's the navigational experience that your users can have. So from the app launcher, what do we have? And I'll show you how you configure that in a second. That's how your users will discover what's available for them. Today, these are the apps that they can take advantage of from Office 365. You can integrate OneDrive for Business, and this is a very typical model where a lot of customers that are hybrid for users OneDrive for Business, instead of dealing with storage on-prem, they just use OneDrive for Business in Office 365. And the experience, it's not going to be disjointed. I'll show you in a second. When they click on it, it'll just bring them to online. You can use Yammer and Sites, which is really good. I'll show this to you in a second. You can have a true hybrid experience with Sites where you can have on-prem team sites, for example, and then communication sites in Office 365, but to the user, it's all aggregated. They don't even have to worry about, where is this again? I mean, they can look at the URL, but it's all an aggregated experience. They can take advantage of Office 365 Video, which, by the way, in due time, it'll be replaced with Stream. I don't know if you're familiar with Office 365 Video. It's a video repository, and Microsoft is enhancing that with a newer technology called Stream. And then last but not the least, you can take advantage of Dell. So let me walk you through these different components and kind of walk you through how to set all this up. Okay, so let's say you decide you want to do hybrid, right? So I've got SharePoint 2016 on-prem, then you sign up for an Office 365 tenant. First things first, I got to go to my, let me double check my admin. Where's my admin center here? Let me just, all right, let me just go here. Let me go to my admin center. So this is Office 365 admin center. And when I go to admin center, there's a, obviously there's an area where I administer SharePoint online. So I go to SharePoint online, I click on that. And as I click on that, notice there's a section here that says configure hybrid. Do you see that? Yeah. So when I click on it, it pops up while it's loading, it's going to pop up a page with a link to a wizard that you can download. Now this is really, really good because in the past, before this wizard, it's like a 40-page TechNet article on configuring hybrid. You got to have some kind of hybrid PhD to do it. Now, with that, so you click on the hybrid picker. I have a recording in the interest of time, so I'll kind of show you what it looks like. So this scenario, right? So is it playing? Oh. There you go. So when I click on that, I click on the wizard. When I run the wizard, essentially it's going to ask you what do you want for hybrid. And what we'll see, in fact, let me kind of, oh, there you go. So when I click on that, notice a wizard comes up. I want OneDrive, I want App Launcher, I want Sites, I want whatever. Everybody see that? And then once you go through this wizard, you'll connect it to your on-prem environment. In fact, you can even pick which web app. Because you may have a bunch of web app that, like HR, we're not going to touch that. But like project management, fine, they can do hybrid. Everybody with me? In fact, you can even set what's called hybrid audience. If you want to try it out and pilot it first, you don't have to do it for every single user. You can pilot it. You can set the audience. You do it on your on-prem environment. You can say, okay, project managers, they'll be my hybrid audience. So only them will have the hybrid capability. So you're not going to distract all the other users. They'll still have their on-prem experience, but this select group will have their hybrid experience. So once you set all this up, right? So let me go back to my admin center. All right. So let's say I've configured all that, which I have. Because remember, I have SharePoint 2016 on-prem Office 365. So let's say I want to, let me go back to my admin center. Let's say I want to set up my app launcher. One of the great things of setting up the app launcher, when I check those boxes, I want Yammer, I want OneDrive, I want Office 365 video, it's going to show up. Y'all with me? But in addition, I can have a custom tile as well. So let's say you want to redirect it to a custom line of business application or some other site. You can go to Office 365, and I can go to, under Setting, Organization Profile. It's kind of hot in here, right? All right, thank you. And then notice that here it says you can add custom tiles for your organization. Now, just don't go too crazy, because I've seen a customer, like, they went too crazy. They had like a really big tile. So don't do it. It's too much. Now, so once you set all that out, okay, so let's say you're ready. You're good to go. So I got that set up, right? Remember, this is my SharePoint 2016 on-prem. This is where users go to, and they'll have the hybrid experience. So I've enabled all this. You can add custom tiles if you want. So what happens next? So when they click on OneDrive, right, it takes them, the way I've configured it, I'm using OneDrive for Business, Office 365. So they'll have that experience right there. And we're all familiar with OneDrive. We know how that works. When I click on, let me go back. When I click on Sites, for example, this is a really cool capability. So check this out. If you're familiar with Sites, right, what happens is it shows all the sites that I'm a part of. But since hybrid is set up, there are sites here that are on premises, and there are sites here that are in the cloud as well. And I can click on certain things, but for example, like extranet. I know the URL is kind of small, but trust me, this is pointing to a site in SharePoint Online. This site right here is is SharePoint Online as well. Let's see, I have a local site. There you go. So this site, Legal and Corporate Affairs, it's pointing to my on-prem. Once you see the recording, you'll see all those URLs. So the experience from a user perspective is seamless, single pane of glass. Now, we kind of walked through this, right? You can extend it and customize with custom tiles. You can take advantage of OneDrive for Business to the user. They won't really see any difference. The experience would be seamless. And then the other great benefit is the idea of being able to use the profile capability of SharePoint Online. And the reason why you want to take advantage of that, because you can leverage Office Delve for the profile experience. So if you're not familiar with Delve, Delve is taking advantage is being leveraged with a technology called Microsoft Graph. There's AI built into it. There's machine learning. So it will look at all the right context of people and content and sites you work with. Now, for those that have custom profile properties, I know some companies have that internally because you use other line of business systems. Microsoft realized that. You can actually extend these profiles on SharePoint Online or in Office 365 for that matter by using bulk CSOM import. And you can not only make these custom properties available online, but you can still use it on-prem. So you'll have that consistent, cohesive experience. Team sites, we talked about it, provides an aggregated view of site membership. Now, one of the really cool things too with site is team site creation. Team site creation. Because some of you may be wondering, well, Docs, what happens if I enable self-service site creation? Where will the site be created? I mean, you can decide. For me, if you're going to allow your end user to do self-service site creation, might as well provide them the capability in SharePoint Online. And once you do that, so let me scroll up. When I hit Create Site, I can go through, pick a team site, communication site, and it will be restricted, obviously, to whoever the audience are allowed to do this or not. So you can also say, you know what, I'm not going to allow this, then if you don't enable this, the self-service site creation will not be available. Okay. Question so far? Is this useful? All right, good. Okay, next.
So I can ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Where do you define creating a site on the cloud or on-prem, like the team site communication?
Very good question. So you define it actually on SharePoint 2016 on-prem, on the server side, in the admin section. So remember the first part where you set up the hybrid, once hybrid's hooked up, then the decision making, right, for a lot of, especially the admin stuff, is on the on-prem. By the way, in this PowerPoint, I have links also to all the instructions, how you set all this up. Okay? Search. Now, search, this is one of the biggest innovation. So let me give you what we had in the past. When hybrid was introduced in SharePoint 2013, the concept of search was this concept of federated hybrid search. Essentially, when you run a search and you had a hybrid in SharePoint 2013, it's querying two separate indexes. The search index of SharePoint 2013 on-prem and search index of SharePoint Online. Now, once those queries are happened, it's presented in a single results page. Now, it's kind of cool, single page, but the problem is there's no relationship between these two indexes. You all with me? There's no affinity, it's non-contextual, so it's still not as relevant. Now, with 2016, they introduced what's called Cloud Hybrid Search. What Cloud Hybrid Search does, SharePoint Online, through its search capability, ingests crawls your on-prem, picks up all the metadata, and creates a single search index combining on-prem and cloud. Y'all follow me? So now when somebody runs a search, the experience will be much more contextual, much more relevant, and much more similar. Now, the result set, by the way, can be from on-prem or in the cloud. So let me go back here. Let's say, let me go to my SharePoint Online environment. And let me run, marketing. Let me run a search, marketing, for example. So when I run a search, notice there's also qualifiers or filters. Right now it's looking at just online. If I look at everything, right? So it aggregates all the results. So there's this one is the on-prem. I know it's on-prem because I have the .co. And then I can look at a file. This one is online because it has the SharePoint.com domain. Yeah. So again, to the user, seamless experience. Yeah, so this is essentially the configuration we saw earlier when I run the hybrid configuration wizard, where I picked that I want hybrid search as well. Next, another innovation as a part of hybrid capability is what's called hybrid taxonomy. Now, if you remember, back in the days, SharePoint has this capability called Manage Metadata Service. It allows you to create term store within your site collections and across your web apps, so you can have a consistent information architecture. Now, with feature pack 1, you can have a unified taxonomy in your hybrid environment. And what that means is you can seed your SharePoint Online term store from on-prem and consistently replicate it as well, which is really good. Now, why is this critical? Why is this important, right? Because think about this. If you're in the path of going hybrid and there's a certain level of migration that may happen, because you may have, I don't know, my site content that you want to move to OneDrive for business. If you don't set up hybrid taxonomy, even if the term is the same, remember how SharePoint loves GUIDs? Even if the term store name is the same and you move it up, yeah, it seems like the name's the same, the GUID ID is different. It's a problem. But if you set up hybrid taxonomy, it will maintain the GUIDs. So what I would recommend, if you're thinking about going hybrid, you're going to start moving your content, your old infrastructure to hybrid infrastructure, set up hybrid taxonomy. Auditing. So I kind of talked about this. SharePoint 2016 coupled with Office 365 has advanced auditing reporting capabilities. It takes advantage of Office 365 Protection Center. Now, this auditing capability called Microsoft SharePoint Insights only works in a hybrid setup. And the reason why is Office 365 Protection Center taps into your on-prem environment, looks at all the logs, ingests it, processes it, and then provides you all the reporting online. Yeah. If you're still on-prem in 2016, you're not doing hybrid, this capability, you can't use it just straight on-prem. Now, I know we've covered a lot, but these links, again, will be made available to you. You can look at all the details of how this is set up. And later, I'll share links as well for a lot of other presentations that has deep dive into setting up hybrid. Now, in the remaining time, I want to cover this topic of migration. Because remember what we discussed earlier, when we got started, we said, look, if you're going to go down this path, right, set up 2016, put the feature packs, enable the hybrid scenario, and then you start moving your old environment in. So what do you do from a migration perspective? By the way, as I'm presenting right now, I'm actually tweeting a lot of these resources. I'm wearing a special HoloLens. Every time I blink, it tweets. But you see a lot of these resources. So if you want to get to it right away, just after this session, go to my Twitter account. You see a lot of these information out there. So how do you get started with migration? First and foremost, just like when you're moving to a new house, you got to figure out what you want to move. The days of lift and shift are over. I know how it goes. Oh, we're going to do it right this time. You know, in our new environment, all the sites will be great, the right content will be the right place, and then your boss comes to you, hey, we need to be there in 2 weeks. What do? Oh, let's just move everything, and once we're there, we'll clean it up. Never happens, right? Microsoft realizes that, so Microsoft provides a free tool called the SharePoint Migration Assessment Tool that allows you to assess what you have, not only from a content perspective, sites you have, customizations you have, and it gives you an inventory of that, so you can make a decision or some kind of judgment on what you want to move, what you don't want to move. Right? Now, for me, this is a pragmatic approach you can undertake, and I'll show you examples, right? When you think about migration, discovery is important. The concept of discovery is figuring out what you have, right? And once you figure out what you have, you decide and prioritize what are we going to get rid of. You know, every time a customer tells me, Docs, you don't understand. We have 2 petabytes of data we need to move. 50% of that, I guarantee you, customer, is junk. So you're going to figure out from an assessment perspective, what are you going to keep, what are you going to move, what customizations you have, what priorities do you need to take care of. And the output of this assessment is what's called a migration design. I'll show you an example of what that looks like. Then you run a pilot of your migration. You run a test, right? Will these things move or not? If it doesn't move, let's tweak the architecture of the migration. And then you do your full migration execution and making sure you support that migration throughout. Because there's never going to be a perfect migration. So how do you do all this, Doc? So let me show you a couple of examples. So like I said, you can take advantage of the SharePoint Migration Assessment Tool. It's a great tool. You can use it for 2013. And the other version is 2016 as well. Now, I've worked with customers where they have older versions, 2010, 2007, right? Or even maybe non-SharePoint, file share, Box, Dropbox. So we have a free tool as well, similar to the migration assessment tool, and I'll share the link later. But essentially, here's an example. I run a scan against a file share, because we're going to decommission the file share, we're going to move it to OneDrive for Business. And it spit back all these things that we had. The cool thing is, part of this discovery tool, it tells me the likelihood of it migrating. Green means it's going to move. Yellow means it's not going to move because it contains illegal characters. You know how your end users love to put crazy file names, right? Red means it's not going to move because it's bigger than the default file size within the library. Everybody with me? Now, oftentimes once we see this, we don't know what these content are. We need to sit down with the users to decide which ones they want to keep or move or not move. But you can't just show an Excel file. Right? So what I would do is I would take this and pump into Power BI and show it this way. Because you know how your users love their dashboards, right? By the way, that's a secret to career success. If you want to get promoted, when you see your boss, look at them in the eye, dashboard. You get promoted. All right, so here's an example. I ingested that report into Power BI, and this is kind of cool. So now it showed all the web apps I have, all the sites I have. So here's now I can filter. This is really cool. Well, retention policy says we only keep anything that's what? Less than 5 years. Anything more than 5 years, we got to get rid of it for records management reasons. Y'all follow me? Well, let's do that. So now I'm going to filter, I don't know, everything 2014, 2013, whatever, right? So as I start filtering all of it, now it tells me which sites has those, which libraries, how many site collections, so I can drill down so I can make an easier judgment. I can talk to marketing and finance and say, hey, look, these are out of compliance. We'll just back it up. We won't move it because it's beyond 5 years. Or we get rid of it. Is this helpful? I'll show you instructions how to set this up, but it's really taking that report and and pumping in Power BI. You can take the report from the SharePoint migration tool to do the same. It's a great way to talk to customers. And the result is I have what's called a migration design. This is a plan for migration going to hybrid. So it's a full-on documentation that I typically work with customers as well, so they'll have a big picture of what the migration looks like. You want a copy of that report too?
Yep.
So after when we're done, I'll zip up a 50 gig zip file and email to all of us. All right, now, so listen, there's a lot of options, a lot of tools for migration. While Microsoft has an assessment tool, Microsoft has an actual tool for migration as well. They've introduced this at Ignite, and I'll provide the link for you. It's straightforward, easy to use. You can take advantage of it. And it's a very simple, fast content migration tool, and it's free, and it's available for all Office 365 customers. Now, if your requirements are somewhat more complicated, right? Another option for migration is if you have Office 365, you can check your fast track benefits. Where beyond SharePoint, there's a benefit for you as a customer where you can use fast track to move Box or Google Drive or file share into OneDrive or SharePoint. So what you do is you log into your Office 365 environment, look at your fast track benefits, and they'll explain what you can take advantage of, right? Lastly, well, docs, it's much more complex than that. We have e-rooms. We have, Lotus Notes. Anybody using Lotus Notes still? Bless your heart. It's okay. There's a lot of other options as well. So certainly, we would love to help you if we can. But with that, I know we've covered a lot, and the most exciting part here is all the innovations we've talked about will also be available in SharePoint Server 2019 coming out next year. What do you guys think? Has this session been helpful?
Yes.
All right. So before I let you go, here are all the resources. I've added additional resources for you. And this will be available on the site. But all the templates, if you want all the templates, the documents, and all that stuff, if you're keen on it, come by after the session. I'll take your information. I'll send all that to you as well. Yeah? So any questions? Feel free to connect with me, and definitely would love to connect with you. So I know it's top of the hour. If you have questions, feel free to stay. If not, thank you for coming to this session. Thank you for coming to Tech Summit, and I look forward to connecting with you further.